Marcus Bennett stood before the floor-length mirror in his penthouse apartment, studying his reflection with a critical eye. Gone was the perfectly tailored Armani suit he typically wore as CEO of LuxeTech Electronics. Instead, he had chosen dark jeans, slightly worn at the knees, and a plain black t-shirt that could have come from any department store. His usually pristine Oxfords had been replaced with casual sneakers, and his designer watch was conspicuously absent. 20 years ago, this would have been his daily attire. Back then, he was just another sales associate at Electronics Warehouse, working long hours while pursuing his business degree at night. The memory of those days, the aching feet, the demanding customers, the supervisors who underestimated him remained crystal clear. Perhaps that's why the recent flood of customer complaints from his Michigan Avenue store in Chicago hit him so hard. Customer service inconsistent staff showing preferential treatment felt unwelcome in the store, Marcus muttered, scrolling through the reviews on his phone. The word stung, especially since he'd built LuxeTech with a singular vision to create an electronics retail chain where everyone, regardless of their appearance or background, would receive exceptional service. His executive team had suggested sending in mystery shoppers or hiring a consulting firm. But Marcus knew better. He'd learned long ago that to truly understand a problem, you had to see it firsthand. That's how he'd built LuxeTech from a single store into a billion-dollar company with locations across the country. The Chicago store, situated in the heart of the upscale Magnificent Mile shopping district, was one of their flagship locations. Its sleek architecture and premium product lineup were meant to compete with the Apple store just blocks away. But lately, something had gone wrong with the culture he'd worked so hard to instill. Marcus's phone buzzed a text from his COO. "You sure you don't want me to handle this? Board meeting on Monday." He smiled, typing back, "Some things need the personal touch. See you Monday." Grabbing his keys, Marcus headed to the garage where his collection of luxury vehicles waited. He bypassed the Bentley and the Mercedes, opting instead for the most modest car he owned, a Tesla Model 3 in basic black. Even this felt almost too flashy for today's mission, but it would have to do. As he drove through the early morning Chicago traffic, Marcus reflected on his journey. From the teenager who fixed computers in his parents' garage to the retail worker who dreamed bigger, to the entrepreneur who took a chance on opening his own store. Every step had taught him valuable lessons about respect, dignity, and the importance of treating everyone equally. Today, he would put those lessons to the test. Not as Marcus Bennett, CEO of LuxeTech Electronics, but as just another customer walking through those doors. What he would discover might be uncomfortable, but he knew it was necessary. Because sometimes the only way to lead was to first understand what your customers truly experienced. The Michigan Avenue store lay ahead, its glass facade gleaming in the morning sun. It was time to go undercover. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, welcoming Marcus into a blast of climate-controlled air. The familiar scent of new electronics and cleaning solution filled his nostrils, the same smell present in all 342 LuxeTech locations. He paused just inside, letting his eyes adjust to the carefully calculated LED lighting that made every product gleam like jewelry. It was 10:15 a.m. on a Saturday, and the store was beginning to fill with weekend shoppers. A group of teenagers huddled around the latest gaming laptops, their excited chatter mixing with the store's ambient music. A middle-aged couple examined smart home devices, while a woman in business attire tested tablets at a demo station. Marcus moved deeper into the store, noting details that would escape most customers but screamed at his experienced eye. The fingerprints on the display cases that should have been wiped hourly. A MacBook Pro slightly misaligned in its showcase. Small things, but they suggested a slip in standards. "Good morning. Welcome to LuxeTech." The greeting came from a young woman in her late 20s, wearing the company's signature blue polo shirt with an assistant manager badge. Her name tag reads Sarah Chen, and her smile reached her eyes, something Marcus had always considered the mark of genuine customer service. "I'm Sarah. Can I help you find anything specific today?" Her posture was professional but approachable, hands clasped in front of her, rather than crossed defensively. "Just browsing for now," Marcus replied, deliberately keeping his tone casual. "But I might have questions about your premium laptops later." Of course, Sarah's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "They're along that back wall. When you're ready, any of our associates can help you, or feel free to find me. I'll be around." Marcus watched as she moved on to greet other customers. Her approach remained consistent, the same warm smile for the teenagers as for the businesswoman, the same attentive posture whether speaking to a young black couple or an elderly white gentleman. This was exactly what he'd envisioned when writing LuxeTech's customer service guidelines. Then he noticed the contrast. James Porter, according to his name tag, was working the same floor. Tall and well-groomed, with carefully styled brown hair and pressed khakis under his polo shirt, he projected an air of polished professionalism. But his product knowledge, displayed as he helped an older white couple with wireless earbuds, was impressive. His smile was practiced, his gestures confident. But as Marcus observed over the next 15 minutes, a pattern emerged. When a young South Asian man approached the smartphone display, James suddenly became very interested in reorganizing the smartwatch section. When a black woman with 2 children asked about tablets, he directed her to another associate before quickly approaching a white customer who had just entered. The selectiveness was subtle, always masked with a veneer of politeness. Someone will be right with you, or let me find someone who specializes in that department, always with a smile, always with an excuse, but always with the same result. Marcus felt his chest tighten. How many customers had noticed this pattern? How many had left the store feeling less than welcomed, their experiences becoming those negative reviews on his phone? He decided to test his observations. Moving to the laptop section, he positioned himself directly in James's line of sight and picked up a high-end gaming laptop. But James glanced his way, then deliberately turned to approach a young white man who had just walked in. "Welcome to LuxeTech. Can I help you find anything?" "Actually, I just had a quick question about the new iPhone," the young man replied. "Of course. Let me show you our full selection." James led him away from the laptop section, despite passing directly by Marcus, who was clearly examining the expensive device. Sarah, who had been assisting another customer nearby, noticed the interaction. A slight frown crossed her face as she watched James walk away. She seemed about to approach Marcus herself when a call for assistance at the checkout registers drew her attention. Over the next hour, Marcus moved through the store, observing more interactions. He watched as James smoothly guided preferred customers through high-end purchases, his enthusiasm and attention unwavering. He saw how other customers, particularly those of color, were subtly directed to other associates or left waiting until someone else could help them. The discrimination was never overt enough to draw immediate complaint. It was death by 1,000 cuts, a slightly delayed greeting here, an overlooked customer there, a sudden need to restock shelves when certain people approached. The kind of behavior that left people feeling unwelcome but struggling to articulate exactly why. But Marcus observed Sarah attempting to compensate, working twice as hard to ensure no customer was neglected. He saw her quiet words to other associates, encouraging them to be more proactive. She was fighting an uphill battle against a culture that had taken root despite everything he'd tried to build. The breaking point came when a well-dressed black family entered the store. The father, wearing a suit that Marcus recognized as Tom Ford, was clearly looking to make a significant purchase. James began moving toward them, then visibly hesitated when he noticed their race. He diverted to a nearby display, suddenly fascinated by adjusting already perfect rows of accessories. Marcus had seen enough. It was time to put an end to this. But first he wanted one direct interaction with James, one chance to experience what countless customers had already endured. He approached the counter where James was now organizing cables, his casual attire a stark contrast to his actual status as CEO. "Excuse me," Marcus said clearly. "I'd like some help with the laptops." The moment of truth had arrived, and Marcus already knew exactly how it would play out. "I'll be with you in just a moment," Sir James replied without looking up from the cable display. His tone was polite but dismissive, a combination Marcus had become all too familiar with over the years. The moment stretched into 5 minutes, then 10. Other customers came and went, receiving James's immediate attention. Marcus stood his ground, his calm exterior masking a storm of emotions. This wasn't just about today anymore. 20 years melted away, and he was suddenly that young sales associate again, watching customers request someone else to help them, overhearing whispered doubts about his competence. Still waiting, a middle-aged woman browsing nearby shook her head in disapproval. "I noticed you've been here a while. It's not right." Marcus nodded appreciatively but remained silent. He'd learned long ago that patience could be a powerful weapon. Besides, every minute he waited was another confirmation of what needed to change. Finally, after helping a young white couple purchase a gaming console, James approached. His body language spoke volumes, slightly turned away, maintaining minimal eye contact, his enthusiasm notably dimmed. "How can I help you?" The question came out flat, perfunctory. "I'm interested in your premium laptops," Marcus stated, gesturing toward the high-end display, particularly the top-tier models. James's response was immediate and practiced. "Those might be a bit out of your price range. We have some excellent budget options." "I didn't mention my budget," Marcus interrupted quietly, the same calm tone he used in board meetings when about to make a crucial point. "I specifically asked about your premium laptops." A flicker of annoyance crossed James's face. "Sir, the laptops in that section start at $3,000. Perhaps if you told me what you're looking to spend." "He's been waiting for 15 minutes for you to make assumptions about his budget." The sharp question came from an elderly white man who had been watching the interaction. "I've been here 30 minutes, and I've seen you help everyone else immediately." James flushed. "Sir, I'm simply trying to direct customers to products that you think they can afford based on how they look." The elderly man wasn't finished. "I've been shopping here for years, but I've never seen such poor service." Other customers were starting to notice. Whispers rippled through the store. Someone had their phone out, possibly recording. James's composure began to crack. Sarah materialized beside them, her professional demeanor firmly in place but her eyes sharp with concern. "Is there a problem here? I'd be happy to help with the premium laptops." "The problem," Marcus said quietly, "is systemic discrimination masked as customer service." He reached into his pocket and withdrew his company ID. "And as CEO of LuxeTech Electronics, I find that unacceptable." The silence that followed was deafening. James's face drained of color. Sarah's eyes widened, though she maintained her composure admirably. The watching customers erupted in murmurs and exclamations. "Mr. Bennett," Sarah recovered first, her voice steady. "I apologize for." "You have nothing to apologize for," Sarah. Marcus cut in. "In fact, your service today has been exemplary. What I've witnessed from you is exactly what LuxeTech should represent." James seemed to shrink into himself. "Sir, I didn't." "No, I was the CEO," Marcus finished. "That's precisely the point. You didn't know what position I held, what cards I carried, or what I could afford. You made assumptions based solely on appearance, just as you've been doing with other customers all morning." The memories flooded back, every slight, every dismissal, every time he'd been underestimated. But now he wasn't that powerless young sales associate anymore. He had built this company to be different, better. And somewhere along the way, in this store at least, that vision had been compromised. "I've been watching for 2 hours," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the now silent store. "I've seen you overlook customers of color, make assumptions about their purchasing power, and provide markedly different levels of service based on appearance. This stops today." The elderly man who had spoken up earlier stepped forward. "I've seen the same thing. Been coming here for years, and lately the atmosphere's changed. Didn't feel right saying something, but maybe I should have." Other customers began sharing their observations. A black woman mentioned being ignored earlier in the week. A South Asian student described similar experiences with James. The dam had broken, and years of quiet frustration poured out. Sarah listened to each comment, taking mental notes, her professionalism never wavering. James stood frozen, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Mr. Bennett," Sarah spoke up. "I've noticed these issues and have been documenting them, but I struggled with how to address them effectively. I should have been more proactive." Marcus nodded, appreciating her honesty. Sometimes it takes a catalyst to bring hidden problems to light. Today's that catalyst. He turned to address the watching customers. "I apologize to anyone who has ever felt unwelcome in my stores. That ends now." The tension in the air was electric. Some customers were filming, others nodding in approval. A few looked uncomfortable, but no one disagreed. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. He'd walked in prepared to observe, but this had become something more, a turning point, not just for this store, but potentially for his entire company. The question now was how to transform this moment of crisis into an opportunity for real change. As he looked at James's pale face and Sarah's determined expression, he knew the next few minutes would be crucial. The easy path would be to fire James on the spot. It would make for a more satisfying story on social media. But Marcus hadn't built LuxeTech by taking the easy path. "James," he said finally, "I think it's time we had a conversation in the break room." "Sarah, please join us," he paused, then added, "This isn't the end. This is where the real work begins." The break room fell silent as Marcus, Sarah, and James entered. Other staff members who had been on break quickly gathered their belongings to leave, but Marcus raised his hand. "Please stay," he said. "What I'm about to say concerns everyone." He pressed the store's intercom button. "All available staff to the break room immediately. This is Marcus Bennett, CEO of LuxeTech Electronics." Within minutes, the room filled with employees. Some looked confused, others nervous. Sarah stood tall near the door, while James slumped into a chair, his usual confidence shattered. "I started this company with a vision," Marcus began, leaning against a table rather than sitting behind it. "A vision of a store where everyone, regardless of their race, appearance, or background, would receive exceptional service. Today, I've seen how far we've strayed from that vision." He recounted his observations, keeping his tone measured but firm. As he spoke, several employees nodded in recognition. Others looked down, perhaps remembering their own moments of bias. Sir James finally spoke up, his voice strained. "I never meant to. I treat everyone with respect. I just try to direct customers to products that seem appropriate for their situation." "Their situation," Marcus repeated quietly. "And how exactly do you determine someone's situation?" "By looking at them, James." The silence was deafening. "Let me tell you about a situation," Marcus continued. 20 years ago, I walked into an electronics store wearing clothes, not unlike what I'm wearing today. The salesperson directed me to the budget section without asking what I wanted. I was actually there to buy equipment for my first store, a $50,000 purchase. But he never knew that, because he never gave me the chance." Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and professional. "If I may, Mr. Bennett? I've observed similar patterns developing here over the past few months. I've tried addressing it through our regular training sessions, but without explicit support from upper management, it's been challenging to create lasting change." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "And that's exactly why I'm here today. This isn't just about one store or one employee. This is about who we are as a company." He turned to James, who seemed to be struggling with a mix of shame and defensiveness. "James, your product knowledge is excellent. Your sales numbers are strong, but you're selling to only half our potential customers, and more importantly, you're betraying our core values." I never thought of it that way," James mumbled. I made assumptions based on experience." "Based on prejudice," Sarah corrected firmly. "Let's call it what it is. I've watched customers leave without buying because they felt unwelcome. That's not just morally wrong, it's bad business." Her directness seemed to finally break through James's defenses. He looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes for the first time. "What happens now?" Marcus straightened up. This was the crucial moment, the difference between punishment and transformation. Now we change. Not just with words or training videos, but with real, measurable actions. He outlined his plan: mandatory diversity training for all staff, but not the typical corporate version. Instead, they would work with community leaders and customers who had experienced discrimination. Regular mystery shoppers of various backgrounds would evaluate service. Employee bonuses would be tied not just to sales numbers, but to customer satisfaction across all demographics. "Sarah," he said, "I'm promoting you to district manager. Your first task is to implement these changes across all Chicago stores." Her eyes widened, but she nodded resolutely. "I won't let you down, sir." And James Marcus paused. "You have a choice. You can either leave LuxeTech today, or you can become part of the solution. Work with Sarah. Learn. Change. Share your journey with other employees. Show them that transformation is possible." The room held its breath. James sat silent for a long moment, then slowly stood up. "I want to stay," he said quietly. "I want to do better." Marcus nodded. "Good. Because this isn't just about LuxeTech. This is about changing the retail industry itself. Today's customers don't just buy products, they buy values. And our values need to be more than words on a website. He looked around the room at his employees, at their mix of expressions ranging from determination to discomfort to hope. This won't be easy, change never is. But if we can't create a truly inclusive shopping experience in our own stores, how can we expect it anywhere else? The meeting concluded with specific action items, timelines, and responsibilities. As staff filed out, Marcus noticed Sarah and James talking quietly in the corner. Change was already beginning. 6 months after Marcus Bennett's undercover visit, the Michigan Avenue LuxeTech store had undergone a remarkable transformation. The changes were evident from the moment customers walked through the doors, not just in the service they received, but in the very atmosphere of the store. Sarah Chen's promotion to district manager proved to be the catalyst for sweeping changes across Chicago's LuxeTech locations. Her first initiative was to redesign the company's training program, moving beyond traditional corporate diversity modules to create something more meaningful and impactful. "We're not just teaching policies," Sarah explained during a regional managers meeting. "We're changing mindsets." Her program brought in customers who had experienced discrimination to share their stories directly with staff. Local community leaders conducted workshops on unconscious bias, and employees participated in role-playing scenarios that challenged their assumptions. The most surprising advocate for these changes was James Porter. After his confrontation with Marcus, James had taken an unexpected path. Rather than quietly fading into the background or leaving the company, he became the face of personal transformation. "I had to confront my own biases," James shared during a company-wide training video. "It wasn't easy admitting I had treated people differently based on appearance. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I couldn't unsee it. And I couldn't stay silent." Under Sarah's mentorship, James developed a program called Recognition and Change, where he shared his journey with other employees. His honesty about his past behavior and commitment to change resonated with staff members who might have been defensive about their own biases. The store's culture shifted dramatically. Mystery shopper reports showed consistent service across all customer demographics. Sales increased by 35% as previously overlooked customers felt welcomed and valued. Employee satisfaction scores rose as staff members found pride in being part of a truly inclusive workplace. Marcus incorporated these changes into LuxeTech's corporate policy. The company revised its hiring practices, promotion criteria, and performance metrics to prioritize inclusive customer service. Training programs were updated nationwide, using the Chicago store's model as a template. What happened in Chicago wasn't just about fixing one store, Marcus explained at the annual shareholders meeting. It was about setting a new standard for retail. "When we say everyone is welcome at LuxeTech, we mean everyone." The impact rippled beyond LuxeTech. Other retailers began implementing similar programs, recognizing that inclusive service wasn't just ethically right, it was good business. Industry publications featured LuxeTech's transformation, and the company's stock value rose as consumers responded positively to their commitment to change. 1 year after his undercover visit, Marcus returned to the Michigan Avenue store. This time he wore his usual business attire, but he observed something different. Every customer received the same warm welcome, regardless of their appearance. James was training a new employee, emphasizing the importance of approaching each customer without preconceptions. Sarah, now overseeing 10 stores across Chicago, had implemented systems to track and reward inclusive service. "The numbers tell the story," she reported. "Our customer base is more diverse than ever, and our satisfaction scores are at an all-time high." As Marcus watched a young black teenager being shown the premium gaming laptops with the same enthusiasm as a business executive shopping for corporate devices, he smiled. This was the vision he'd had 20 years ago when he opened his first store. It had taken an undercover visit and some difficult conversations, but LuxeTech was finally becoming what it was always meant to be, a place where technology and equality intersected. Sometimes, he mused to Sarah before leaving, the best way to lead is to step back and see things through different eyes. The Michigan Avenue store had become more than just a success story, it was a blueprint for change, proving that with the right leadership, courage to confront uncomfortable truths, and commitment to real transformation, any business could become truly inclusive. They say real change begins with a single step. For LuxeTech Electronics, that step was a CEO willing to walk in his customers' shoes. But the journey didn't end there, it was just the beginning. Today, LuxeTech stands as a testament to what's possible when we confront our biases and commit to genuine transformation. The company that began with one man's vision of inclusive service has become a model for the entire retail industry. Marcus Bennett often reflects on that Saturday morning when he walked into his own store as just another customer. It reminded me of an essential truth, he says. You never know someone's story by looking at them. The person you're judging might just be the CEO. The lesson extends beyond retail. In our daily lives, we all make split-second judgments about others based on appearance. But those judgments don't just hurt the people we underestimate, they limit our own growth and potential.